Hello everyone! In today's vlog, we are here in Spring Hill, Florida to attend the Nature Coast Orchid Society meeting featuring Lady Vanda Serena. We were early, so we were just roaming around seeing what's happening inside since it's my first time to attend a society meeting or an orchid society meeting. Thank you.
Welcome to the club.
Oh, wow. Oh, it's 5 years old. This one is 5 years old. This one. Yeah, let's see. That's the name. It's a 5-year-old thing. That one is a different one. I can
6 months.
the name.
I got it at the auction.
Oh, this one is so cute. I don't know what's the name. Dendrobium. It's a dendrobium. Ooh. Dendrobium bractescens. I like this one too. Like, it smells so good. This one. 1 year. Oh wow, the clothes. Then this is the name. This one. The name is Cattleya Dirt Tokyo Girl. Oh, this violet one is a Cattleya. I don't know. Can't read it. Wow. This one is so pretty. This one is so interesting. This one, 4 months?
That's what it says.
Wow.
It's a very different.
Yeah. It's 4 months.
Have you owned it? But maybe
Yeah, but the flower is so very exquisite.
very different. Isn't
Yeah, it's very nice though. Nice, look at the flower. Since it's an 11 to 2 p.m. event, they also have a section where you can always get food and drinks. However, the best part of all this was meeting Lady Vanda in person, Serena. This was before her talk, so. Looking at all of these very beautiful vandas that I want to take home so much, but I can't. So I'm just distracting myself with the people and falling in line to pay for the orchids that I bought before Lady Vanda's talk.
Today, my name is Serena. I am the owner, along with my husband Ernesto, back there with our beautiful screaming child. We're the owners of Lady Vanda Orchids. On paper, we have been in business since 2020, right before our lovely pandemic crash that we had in that Q1, Q2 of that year. Prior to that, we were just really large hobbyist growers. We started our business primarily growing vandas, dendrobiums, and some cattleyas. I got into slipper orchids as well. We used to go to some local farmers markets and pop-ups, give divisions to friends, trade plants that way. And by popular demand, somehow I ended up importing plants and then growing from flask and working with others and then the business. And that's how I'm here today. That's how I know a little bit more than the average hobbyist. So I still grow very much like a hobbyist. I still grow quite small scale of our plants. I'm very selective about what we import, what we bring to our shows. We do handpick all of the stuff that we are bringing to shows and to presentations. So although this is already kind of the season for vandas to not be blooming so much as it cools down and the days get shorter, a lot of the plants that are over there are still coming into spike, so they may not have open blooms, but double check, and if you need help looking for a spike, my husband and I are here to help you as well. So today's presentation is on the cultivation of vanda orchids. I'm going to do it a little differently because I have so many different vanda type orchids here. I'm going to present off of the PowerPoint, but also demo some of the plants to you to showcase slight differences in their anatomy, their growing habits, and even some cultural cues that can help differentiate and get you those flowers and healthy growth on them as well. So just to go off, these are a couple photos of us, my husband and I. As you can see, we like to go to a lot of different shows and presentations. We tend to bring a spread of pretty much just about everything that we grow. but vandas and the slipper orchids are our main priority. Vandas because they are pretty easy and self-sustaining here in Central and South Florida because of the weather and a good amount of rain that we usually get. I know this year was a little drier than normal on this coast, but hopefully next year brings better times for the weather. And slipper orchids because I like the challenge of growing them, especially when you're growing warm growing hybrids. A lot of the ones that we get are from South Asia and from Hawaii, so they are very well acclimated to hot, humid temperatures. I would not be selling them if they couldn't handle our temperatures and if they weren't handling our summer temps. So if you are interested in any of the PAP species or hybrids I have, or even the fragmentariums, you can definitely ask me questions after the presentation as well. One more thing to hint on, I am going to go a little bit over them. I do have Macara or Aranda orchids. They are the vanda family. They're one of the few vanda orchids that can be acclimated up to full sun, and they're often used for landscaping. A lot of customers down south will put these on their fence lines or palm trees. So if you're looking for something that is in flower year round, you can definitely ask us some more questions about those in the back. Yeah. So, noteworthy vandas. I always talk about these two because a lot of people don't know that they're actually vanda orchids, and I do have one here as a demo. On the left-hand side, you have a large Cytophidania nitrata that is mounted. These guys used to be condensed into Arides, so your Arides huletiana, your Arides lawrenceae, they are still the vanda family. But what is so different about them, and I know you may not be able to see it so well on the screen, is their common name is the bearded orchid, or the beard orchid. And the reason why is because they're succulent-like foliage, little pencil tubules hang down just like a beard, alongside the root system. Most of the time you'll find these guys mounted on driftwood, cork, plastic slats, even in baskets. They can be left bare root just like other vandas, but of course bare root, they should be watered daily, ideally. You do not want any direct light on these guys unless it's morning sun, same as the rest of your vandas, and I'll go over a little more specifically for these guys. But they're characterized by the foliage that grows directly upwards, searching for the light. The flowers are small, white and pink flowers. There is an all alba, or white colorless version as well. Highly fragrant, and the blooms glisten in the sun as if they were coated in glitter. They're the absolute most cutest thing ever. I have a few of these guys left that didn't sell. These guys do bloom late winter, early spring. So if you're looking for things to bloom in that time period, these are definitely a species that you can go with. And they get much bigger than this very quickly. On the left-hand side, it's a little blown out, but that is a Neophanetia falcata, or it was reclassified into Vanda falcata. That is a miniature Japanese vanda species. So if you're looking to get into miniature vandas, Neophanetia falcatas and their hybrids are definitely a way to go. They have been being used more in cultivation for hybridization. They're known for their very fine star-shaped flowers. Neostylus bluesneeri is one of the most popular hybrids that you'll find. That's usually available on the market year-round, and they give a light purple-blue, almost white flower, but it does have a hint of color to it. They're also fragrant as well. But I like to talk about those two because a lot of people don't know that vandas can come in miniature, or they can come much larger, like some of these guys that I have here. And that's why I have demo plants as well to showcase the differences in their growing habits. So, it's important to be an informed buyer for any hobby that you're in, obviously, so you know where to spend your money. But I think vandas are important because I often hear, why is there such a big price difference between a vanda and a phalaenopsis, or even a vanda and a dendrobium hybrid? Often it's because of the age. So just like most other orchids in cultivation, they have to be grown from seed in a lab setting because the seeds are so fine and they are susceptible to mold and fungi to inhibit their growth. So these guys, most of the time, are grown from seed. They're usually not clones or divisions for a standard vanda hybrid like this. And to get from seed to this size, where it's flowering and growing well and well established, can be anywhere from 4 to 6 years.
Wow.
Usually the average is about 5 years of age before a vanda can come to market and be sold as blooming size or previously bloomed. When you're buying a near blooming size orchid, that also depends on sure that when you're buying orchids from any vendor, you ask if it's already blooming size. And if they tell you it's near blooming size, ask them about what more or less the timeline is before you see those flowers. Because near blooming size for different growers can mean different things. Look for healthy foliage, healthy roots, and active crown growth. So what does that mean? On this guy, you can see plenty of nice white roots. These roots, once they are heavily drenched, will go green. So that means they're actively absorbing. You want to look for active crown growth or plant. So could you divide this? Absolutely. Would I recommend it? No. Why? How do you get specimen-sized plants that are worth judging and being awarded? Usually, us vendors, us growers, will not divide our plants to get them to specimen size. You don't inhibit growth that way, you don't send the plant into shock that way, and eventually all of these growths will be mature flowering size, and that's how you get a plant that has 30 inflorescences at a time, 20 inflorescences at a time. You simply can't divide it. One mother plant, without all of its babies, is not going to flower that prolifically. She needs all of her babies to help her going. So that's something to look for when you're shopping for vandas. Now, not all hybrids or even species will kiki so prolifically, so they won't grow all those babies. Some varieties may put out one kiki at the base, or a basal kiki. Some of them put them out in the leaf axis, like this one here is growing from the leaf. When they grow from the leaf axis, you should not remove it. It does not have its own root system, so it will not survive on its own. When they grow at the base, generally, that's where you can divide them because they will have their own root system. And if you're ever in doubt about dividing a plant, call me or any other vanda grower, which I don't even have many up here, but call me first so we can decide if it should be divided and where and when is best so that you can actually have a viable plant. Oh, one last thing. Vandas can be sold bare root or potted. I've had that question today several times on what to do with some of the vandas that are currently bare root, like the macaras and the renantheras. Most growers will sell them bare root on wire hangers. That goes for your standard strap leaf vanda, which are these guys. You'll see them in baskets and on the wire hangers from the vendor. They can be mounted on cord. Some varieties do very well mounted, like the matradas. And then, like the renantheras, these guys, you will often find these basketed and even potted. These guys are one of the few varieties that can and should be potted in order to maintain all of the leaves on the fan and to maintain the integrity of the root system. You can technically pot any vanda orchid, but if you do, you want to ensure that you're providing very well draining media. So think sponge rock, charcoal, bark, and you want it to be usually anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to an inch in size. Very large, very well draining. You want it to maintain a zone of humidity, but you do not want it to stay soaking wet in between waterings. When it comes to watering vandas, I will hint on that a little more later, but when it comes to watering vandas, it's not about the quantity of water that you're giving them, it is about the frequency. And I'll go a little more over that, but just keep that in mind, because I know the biggest question I always get is, I water my vandas all the time, they're not flowering. There could be several reasons, and we'll troubleshoot that later as well. So identifying your vanda's origins. Why is this important? Because there are some varieties that need special cues to kind of get them to flower and grow a little better. There are some that have interesting growing habits. Obviously, if you didn't know this was a vanda, and I didn't tell you this was a vanda, you might take this home and treat it completely differently than what I've told you today. So understanding where your plants are coming from, if they're hybrids, what their lineage is, so you understand what might be normal and what might be a sign of something that's to come that could be detrimental to the plant. That's very important for any plant, any genus, but with vandas it's definitely a big help because most of what you find on the market are complex hybrids with a lot of different parents mixed in. So one of the examples I have here, this is an Centromethulaceum. This is a species. These guys will get freckling along the leaves because they produce a lot of what's called anthocyanin. Anthocyanin is one of the chemicals that plants produce that's responsible for creating purples, reds, and even orange and some pink varieties of flowers. So when you see certain plants that get freckles, you might initially think it looks like fungus or leaf spot issues. But one key way to tell the difference between a fungus and actual freckling in the plant is to run your hand along the foliage. If it feels raised or sunken in, that could be a fungal issue. If it's totally smooth to the touch and it's actually pigmented more purple than a purple red than a brown color, that's usually a sign of that anthocyanin being present. And that usually comes out when you're growing your plants in higher light as well. So some varieties will produce the anthocyanin and not really flower. It's real quick, but vandas are monopodial for the most part, with the exception of the mitrata that grows in clumps. But monopodial meaning they have one central stem from which all the growth grows and proliferates from. At the base, you'll have your root system. Now, some vanda hybrids, like macaras and renantheras, like these guys, will grow roots all along the stem. That is normal. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no mutation or anything. You don't have to pot all of the roots. If you wanted to pot or basket it, you can just pot the base of it and keep growing from there. But just know that some of these guys have that weird growing habit, and they will continue to grow roots. They will attach to concrete walls. They will attach to benches. They will attach to your concrete floor if given the opportunity. So if you're moving vandas that have crazy air roots, be conscientious that there might be some hidden roots creeping out of your pot, or even if you're up against a wall, so that you don't tear the root system apart. Just be conscientious of that, especially as we're all bringing in and doing our orchid shuffle for the winter season upon us. They do grow a crown, just like this guy. Now, the cool thing about vandas is when you water the whole plant. It is very, 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 very rare, if not near impossible, to kill a vanda with crown rot, simply because of the angle at which the leaves attach to the stem. It lends itself very nicely to water running out of the crown. You don't really have to worry about that. Especially if you're growing them outdoors and you have good airflow, you shouldn't have any issues with that. So when you water, when you fertilize, when you use your fungicide program and your pesticide program, when you're spraying, you can spray the entire plant. You can even spray the flower spikes before they've emerged. And then you just want to be careful to not spray the flowers. They usually won't burn if you do spray them once they're open, but they will wilt a few days earlier. So just be conscious of that. The flowers can be a little delicate when it comes to using any chemicals on them. So, just so you guys can see a little better, this is an example of a macara orchid, which are some of the ones that I have in the back. That's these guys. Again, these guys can't go to full sun, but these guys get roots all up and down the stem. These guys are cultivated a little differently than your standard vanda. So when you see these are from seed. These are seed grown usually. Sometimes you'll see divisions from mother plants, but the grower should let you know that that's a clone or a baby of a mother plant. These guys are what's called a top cutting. So these guys come off of extremely large specimen-sized plants with multiple growths, multiple crown points. And they go ahead and pick an area on the stem that has anywhere from about 12 to 24 inches of growth, and it's got a couple of roots. And they go ahead and they slice. You don't snip with scissors whenever you're doing divisions, because you can crush that growth point and damage it. And then it can also cause issues with scarring on the plant tissue and can introduce bacteria and pathogens. So you slice clean, and that goes for dividing pretty much any orchid, but definitely with these guys. They let this callus over, and then they go ahead and ship these out for import. So these guys are cut fresh from the mother plant just a few days before exporting them. These guys tend to come from Thailand and the Philippines. These guys are their own plant. They have their own root system. So to get these going again, you can pop these up, again, very chunky bark, or just leave them standing up somewhere. We usually acclimate them quite literally leaning against our benches, and you just spray the whole plant top to bottom. If you have a product like kelp Super Thrive, or something else that helps with rooting. I do go over a couple products we use for rooting. That's the way to get these guys established. It'll take a few weeks, but as soon as you start seeing new root tips, you can usually mount them where you'd like to put them. Again, like I mentioned, you can put them on the bark of a tree, you can put them on a fence line, or you can pop them up in a semi-permanent area. And these guys, after they've been established in your area, it takes a couple of months to get them going again, but after they've been established, these guys are flowering almost year-round, and they will put out multiple flower spikes at a time. I've got some right now that we imported back in April, May of this year, and it took them about 4 months to get going again, and since about August, they have all been in flower consecutively after that. So really cool, really easy to grow. If you have any more questions, come find me after the presentation. On our website, I have an orchid care blog dedicated to these guys and everything we do to get them flowering and going again. We use, why we use them, and when we use them. The cultivation basics, I've mentioned these already a few times. Understand origin and the natural place where your plants come from. Again, most of us vendors are importing our vandas. If we're not growing them here from seed or from flask, they're being imported from Southeast Asia. Very warm, very humid, really no cold season. So when you do experience the cold now in the winter, don't let your vandas get below 55, 60 degrees. The values for NPK are 795. We do not use the bloom version. We don't have a bloom sequence on our plants. They get fed the same thing at the same rate 52 weeks out of the year. There is no reason to use bloom because bloom just switches the ratios for your nitrogen and phosphorus, and because there is no media attached to these guys, they're not going to absorb at any different rate. Again, you don't really need to change anything on their fertilizer because there's nothing to hold the media there between waterings. So it's better to just fertilize a little more frequently and supplement with what you may need. Plants of any kind, but vandas and cattleyas especially, can benefit greatly from calcium and magnesium, especially now in the winter. You may have heard or read on some orchid blogs to supplement your plants with Epsom salts. Why? When you see plants in the winter, especially vandas, especially ones that have been left out that are magnesium deficient, their green turns purple, or actually more of a red color. That is quite literally a sign of magnesium deficiency. Magnesium is extremely important to help keep the integrity of your cell walls and of your leaf structure. So magnesium is very important for preventing sun damage, very important for preventing heat damage and cold weather damage as well. So we supplement year-round, once a month. We feed calcium and magnesium. The product we use specifically is called Cali Magic. There's also a product called Cal Mag, which is often used for people that grow tomatoes. Same product, same ratios, it works wonderfully. If you have cattleyas that in the summertime get cane rot or the pseudobulb rot, that black rot, you just lose the whole bulb, it's usually a calcium magnesium deficiency as well. They're getting way too much water, way too much sunlight, and they're depleting their nutrients trying to grow in the warm season. So, additional to CalMag once a month. In the winter time, we will supplement with Epsom salts or magnesium. You can buy Epsom salts at Walmart, Target, your grocery store. Unscented, so no fragrance, no color additives, just the bag of Epsom salts. And you want to add 1 teaspoon per gallon. The main time to use it, if you're not going to use it regularly, is just a day or two before a cold spell. So if you know you're going to leave the plants outside and it's going to go under 60 degrees, even if it's only for a couple of hours, you're not worried about frost buildup, you're okay leaving them out, spray them with the magnesium. You want to ensure that you're giving them a little extra boost of integrity for that cold drop. And the main thing is, even if you get a little bit of discoloration in the leaves, you won't freeze the leaf off and you won't lose it. I think Dr. Modes writes in his book, The Sound of Tinkling Vanda leaves as they hit the ground of your nursery floor. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. That's quite literally what happens. I'm not sure if it's frost buildup between the leaf and the stem, or if it's just quite literally the cells will wither away in the cold, but you will be able to break the leaves off. They won't look like they're damaged from overnight being out in the cold, but you will just breeze by them and you'll drop 2 or 3 leaves on the plant. So just be very careful in the winter if you have vandas. They're one of the few orchids that we grow in South Florida that truly do not tolerate cold. I've successfully taken them down to 50 degrees as long as you're treating with magnesium regularly. But if you kill any of your vandas, it's not my fault. So I don't recommend going under 55.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you mix the magnesium with your regular fertilizer?
Absolutely. So we mix all of our fertilizer, rooting supplements, and our magnesium and calcium. We'll do it all in one feeding. And then when we do our fungicide and pesticide, we mix those in a separate feeding. They concentrate, but there is a product called KLN. It is an actual rooting hormone with an active ingredient. KLN is very popular for anyone that does grafting or even growing of any type of plant, especially when you're doing repotting or divisions. KLN should be kept refrigerated, or at least in indoor temperatures, between 60 and 70 degrees. You don't really want it to go above 80, so do not leave it out because you kill the active ingredient, which is what helps your plants root. Rooting hormones are not a replacement for a poor watering schedule. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people don't water their vandas frequently enough. Again, it's not the volume, it's the frequency. So if you have a plant that you just bought, like this Macaras, or any of these guys, these are recently divided plants, rooting hormones are just gonna help the plant get going with new root growth again. But then the way you maintain that is by maintaining a proper water schedule and fertilizer schedule after that. It's also good for plants that are dehydrated. So if you have a plant that maybe wasn't on the best watering schedule and now you're being a little bit better about it, or you have a plant that you recently bought as a seedling or was recently divided, make sure that you are giving it a little bit of extra supplementation in the beginning. With most rooting hormones or products that help reroot your plants, you want to feed once every 10 to 14 days for about a month. You just want to give it a couple of waterings to make sure you're really giving it those trace nutrients and it gets established in your area as quickly as possible. Additionally, when you are working with plants and you're trying to get root systems back going, place them in shade. If they are getting some sun, you want to be bright indirect light. You don't really want the plant focusing on photosynthesizing and growing leaves or flowers. You want it to focus on growing roots, and it doesn't need a whole lot of sunlight for that. But you just want to give it a kind of a stress-free time where you're babying and caring for it a little more to get it established in your area.
Here, she was explaining how to grow awardable plants or orchids. First, do not divide cakeys. Second, do not cut the tops or crowns. Third, do not cut the roots. Fourth, do not remove from baskets. And fifth, remember to protect your plants from cold weather. Bring them inside or cover them with light fabric. This is the part which I've been waiting for so long. It's the raffle draw where you'll get free orchids.
Next one is 9621.
Oh.
9621.